didn't write was the story about a baby nurse that we had. Her name was, oh, maybe some of you had her, Nalita, and she was from, oh God, she was from Guatemala, and she was a witch, and she was had a thing, which was I wasn't allowed to hold my son if she was in the house because it would undermine her authority. So every day that we had her, and the reason why we had her there was because no one else could stop him from crying. So I couldn't fire her because she knew how to tie and swaddle him up, and she would hit him on his back with a harder force than I could bring myself to do because I didn't know that I was using his feeding tube incorrectly for over a year, and I was actually causing the gas that was making him uncomfortable. I couldn't fire her, and she wouldn't let me hold my son, and I, for 6 months, when she was our night nurse, cried every single night in the bathtub because I couldn't hold my son at night because she was there, but I needed her, but I couldn't hold her. And it killed me because I still feel guilty that I feel I didn't get to bond properly with my son when he was a baby because he was covered in appliances and I had to hire someone who would hold him. I couldn't get that in the book. And that was why I wanted to write the whole book to begin with, just to talk about that incident. But it didn't fit in with the story of how our son's, who's doing very well now, just want to mention that, illness was affecting our marriage. And I had to cut it out because it didn't fit the book.
So tell us that part.
That's the,
that was the story. But how did that play out with you guys? I mean, that must have been excruciating.
Well, I tried. I tried to force it in every moment in this chapter, or even come back to it in that chapter.
And how did it play out with you and Jeff? Oh. I mean, having to, that whole stuff that happened.
Well,
when did you fire her?
Finally, you know, well, the thing is, it gets one mention in his story. It gets, he gets one mention of it saying, you know, this one voodoo, witchy baby nurse who he had to fire for me because I couldn't fire her eventually. I mean, it just, I couldn't get the story in. I mean, the thing is, he wasn't really part of it. It was my trauma, and so it just wasn't our story. And when we sold the book as our story, because I could have written just my story, but we ended up deciding to write this one together. It didn't fit in. So, I mean, because it wasn't his story. That is the whole thing. It just wasn't his story. And that is just, I think, a big lesson about writing. And the lesson is don't write with your husband. Write your own damn book. But I think it's a lesson about how you have to kill your babies sometimes for the ultimate good of the writing. And if you're going through that yourself and you're writing and you haven't found place for something and you're not alone. Everybody goes through it, even in books you see published, and I just thought that was really what I wanted to talk about today, is killing the babies. And that's it.